Hello and welcome to The Habit Architect. I'm really excited to have Tabby Kerwin join us today. You can find this episode and all our episodes on your favorite podcast player. And of course, it's always going to be on video on YouTube and LinkedIn. So check out The Habit Architect. You can sign up for our newsletter as well, and we'll keep you informed on future guests and past conversations. And this episode is sponsored by Time Bandit. So if you want to go check that out, go to timebandit.io and take a look at the app. We've now embedded our AI capability for habit coaching and priority coaching into the mobile app. So go check that out. There's a free trial, 7-day free trial. So give that a go. Hello, Tabby. Good morning.
Good afternoon for me, but good morning to you.
Yes, very nice to see you. Very nice to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to go talk about a lot. So for those of you tuning in, Tabby has got an interesting story. I think it's very inspirational. You've run in a business, and then all of a sudden something in life happens, and you become a very different perspective of being a parent and being an entrepreneur, etc., business owner, mom, all of that stuff, musician. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But why don't we start by you telling everybody about you and who you are and what your work and so forth.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so I'm over here in the UK, and currently I'm working as a performance coach and mindset coach, writing a lot of books and doing a lot of speaking, talking about the difficult subjects that people kind of tend to shy away from, especially around things such as grief and mental health. They're like my specialist areas, which is based on a lot of scientific research and professional experience, but also a lot of lived experience as well, both with mental health issues, having lived with depression and anxiety for quite a chunk of time, but also grief following sort of multiple deaths that I've experienced with people close to me, that I suppose really goes all the way back to my childhood, some 30 or so years ago, when my dad died when I was 16. And then 11 years ago, my brother died. And then 6 years ago, my husband died after a short illness as well. So what I've really tried to do is to build my business, to build my work life, my personal life, blend it all together and really build it on this foundation that hope is an anchor, and it is possible to be happy and healthy even when those hard things happen, because those hard things are always going to happen. So that's fundamentally where I am and what I'm doing now.
Yeah, there's a lot there, right? There's a lot in there.
Let's start unpacking it.
You talk about mental health, and it certainly, I think it is in the UK. It certainly is in the US. It's talk. I mean, you can find articles on it daily, multiple articles on it daily, particularly in the workplace, but also in colleges, in high schools, and everywhere. And then you take into. But one thing that you don't see a lot of articles on is mental health of kind of adults in their personal life too, right?
Yeah.
They tend to, it's a work article or a home article. It's not kind of.
Yeah, it's like we have to pigeonhole it or label it that it's stress or burnout because of work, or it's because of being a parent, if you're a woman, postnatal, whatever it is. It feels like it's pigeonholed and labeled, and people forget there's a bigger picture. There is the personal side as well, which is all part of it.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it, but the word resilience it's maybe overused, but it's a resilient word, I guess.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about mindset and habits, but we also are a musician. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so originally I was a professionally trained musician. That my first degree that I did back in the 1990s was a music degree. And I was born to a very musical father who was in the military as a professional musician. And when he left the military, he actually became the director of music at a girls' prep school. So I was born into that. And really, it was the expectation that I would be a musician. And that was, I very much felt that growing up. And I enjoyed it. When my dad was around, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the music. I enjoyed doing it. And I was good at it. So that made it more enjoyable because, things that you're good at, there is a level where you enjoy them. But I guess when my dad died when I was 16, then the kind of expectation shifted. The pressure on me shifted, and it was almost like, well, you have to do music, because the words I heard so often was daddy would expect it, and that's the pressure that got put on me. Now I know, or I truly believe, that if I turned around to my dad at any point and gone, do you know what, I want to go and be a gardener or whatever it is, he would have gone, you go and do you, be happy. No expectation here. But because he died, because he was a musician, that was all I heard. Even in the few days after he died, I remember I was playing in a brass band down near where my mum lives now, and they were due to play an event, and I think it was 5 days after he died. And the last thing I wanted to do was go and do it. But all I got told as a 16-year-old was, yeah, but daddy would expect it. And I had no option. So music was something that throughout my life has been joyous. I've shared experiences that I've loved, but it's also been something I've resented, because maybe it wasn't what I actually wanted. And I do actively play again now, and I'm performing regularly. I'm really fortunate to play in one of the world's best brass bands, one of the top 10 in the UK, and I'm so fortunate to do that. But I only came back to playing after the COVID pandemic. Prior to that, I had kind of 10 years off playing properly at high level, because a lot of my issues around depression and anxiety were born out of my experiences in a musical ensemble. So throughout my life, music has weaved its way as, yes, I am a professional musician. Yes, I am a musician. Sorry. Yes, I have loved it, but I've also hated it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because the music that your father enjoyed so much became not necessarily, I don't want to say a weapon, that's the wrong word, but it became kind of.
But you're absolutely right. Yeah, but not from him.
Right.
But it was almost in the way of how other people were handling their grief. They were trying to keep a part of him alive, but using me to do that. And as a 16-year-old that had no support around grief or anything at the time, I didn't know any better. So all I'm going to do is people please and say yes. But this at 16 grounded something in me that then really became my downfall for many decades.
Yeah, exactly. And what a journey you've been on. And let's talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned your husband passed away as well, and you were. My understanding is you guys were running a business together. You were parents together, and then you weren't together because of this unfortunate accident. So, I mean, talk about that a little bit about, I mean, how do you just cope with that? Much less if somebody wants to tell you to go play music at that point, right?
Well, bizarrely, it was Simon dying back in 2018 that brought me back to music. So he was a professional musician as well. And he was very well known as a composer and arranger of music for brass bands. He was also the conductor, the bandmaster of a military band here as well, and numerous other ensembles. And it was almost my grief that brought me back to music. It was something that took it away from me originally, but it brought me back. And it certainly brought me back to brass bands, because the support I got from the people that knew him, it was very different to my experience when I was 16. And we both came to each other. We weren't, our first marriages for either of us, and we had kids from previous relationships, but we certainly parented my son together. And my son, we call him Dad. He was his dad. And we'd come to this from a place in our lives where neither of us had been truly happy. We had been friends for years. We'd been working together for years. And it was kind of that one day of, oh, actually, maybe there's more to this. Maybe we could make this work. And we feel like we found our happy, and we had this really great flow where we could work together. We could be together. We could be apart from each other. And it was great. It was relaxed. It was easy. And for the first time, I felt, especially having had, those years with depression and anxiety previous, that, this is good. I can trust in this now. I'm happy now. And I really believed for a long time it was Simon that had given me the strength to be happier, to be more positive, to live free of depression and anxiety. And just at that moment when we started to believe, life's good, we got this diagnosis. And he was diagnosed with a germ cell tumor after several months of back and forth of what is it, what isn't it, it started with a bad back. And for anyone that doesn't know, a germ cell tumor is what they describe here in the UK as a young man's tumor. Very often only, people in their males in their 20s, and he was well into his 50s. And it's a form of testicular cancer. But for him, it didn't emanate in that area of his body.
Yeah.
It started as a backache. And what that backache was actually a tumor pressing on his spine.
Yeah.
But consequently, because of that, it took a while to diagnose.
Right.
And so we got this diagnosis, but it was always meant to be treatment for cure. Okay, so that was what it was. Yeah, this is absolutely treatable. It's going to be tough because, this treatment is designed for young men in their 20s. So he had something like 50 rounds of chemotherapy in an 11-week period, and it was absolutely brutal on his body. But, he just went through it the whole time, not really telling anyone he was ill, and still working all the time in between the hospital visits, in between the admissions for infections and stuff. And that meant for me that I wasn't telling anyone apart from our very, very close circle and our kids, because it wasn't my story to tell at that point.
Yep.
And then he got caught out on this technicality because of the treatment he was having. There was a certain type of chemotherapy called bleomycin, which he was having, which impacts your ability to have oxygen. If anything happens, it basically then solidifies your lungs so you can't breathe, sort of thing. And he got this infection. They said, look, we can't give you oxygen, but we're going to try something else. And we're just going to take the pressure off your lungs by putting you on a ventilator for 48 hours. And then you'll come out and it'll be right as rain. And we've just run the scans and we can see that your tumor's pretty much gone now. So this is great. We'll just give you this respite for 48 hours. And then that's it. We're good to go. Well, the only problem was after that 48 hours, he got a ventilator-associated pneumonia, spent 3 weeks in ICU, and then died.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, well, this definitely wasn't the plan.
Right.
And, we were treatment for cure here. And also nobody else knows. So now, and I remember it was in October in 2018, and my birthday is the end of October. And on my birthday, he'd been in ICU for about 3 or 4 days by then. And on Facebook, I was getting hundreds of messages saying, hope you're having a great day. Hope Simon's treating you well. Hope, all this. And I'm like, okay, this has now become my story to tell. And it was like, I really appreciate all your birthday greetings. And I remember writing this post sat by his bed in ICU saying, look, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for the birthday wishes. But I have to tell you, the reality of what's going on is this. And people were like, oh my God, had no idea. And they were just devastated because he was known by so many people. And he was one of those life's truly popular characters, always life and soul, always the naughty one, but always the person that was generous with his time. And so it became my story to tell then. And then 2.5 weeks later, he died. And that was at the point where it was like, well, what do I do now? Right. And I really thought, but Simon has been he fixed me from depression and anxiety. How the hell, before we get to the layers of, okay, being a mum by myself without him, running the business we'd built by herself, before any of that, I kind of had to go, how do I function without him? Because it was my belief that he had given me the strength to live free of depression and anxiety. But I very, very quickly realized, and I actually started writing when I was sat by his bed in the hospital, which then went on to become my first best-selling book. And I'm glad I journaled everything and wrote it at the time, because what I discovered very quickly was that he hadn't given me everything to live free of mental health issues. What he'd done was empowered me to develop the tools myself. And a few days after he died, I thought, actually, it's not that I need him, because he's given me everything. I have it already. I just have to now utilize all these habits and these tools and everything that I know. And then I can start day by day working out what I want, knowing that it's possible to have that, knowing that I can grieve and be sad and be angry and be happy all at the same time and navigate that roller coaster of emotions. And I can run the business, but I have to do it the way I need.
Yeah, it's interesting. You covered a lot there about just when I put it in the framework of mental health. you were dealing with a lot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I went through cancer, and I continued to work. I'm not sure why we do that, but we do.
I know.
But I had to tell people because I was carrying a pump, a full
Yeah.
flex pump that pumped chemo in throughout the week. So you had to explain what's this on the table, even though I'm in conference rooms, I've got it on the table. You kind of have to explain it. But I can't imagine that adding to the pressure of you saying, well, it can't really tell what's going on here, but in the background, something's going on. And then you're still trying to run your business, and you're still trying to be the best parent and all that stuff. But I think you said something there at the end that's interesting. He gave you the tools you needed to do it. Maybe you felt like he was doing it for you, but you were doing it yourself. It was just, you were enabled. So
it empowered me to have those tools myself. Yeah.
So what are some of those tools that you use to kind of get through that and still manage your business today?
Yeah. So those tools are really the things of, the basics of confidence, communication, those kind of things. So knowing that it is possible to do anything, but I don't have to do everything. I don't have to be all things to everyone. Fundamentally, at the start, I have to do what's right for me, not in a selfish way, but there is an element of being selfish about it, but in a way that suits me. It's that analogy, isn't it, of putting your oxygen mask on first, and that's okay to do. Because if you don't look after yourself first, you can't be there for others. And I am a recovering people pleaser, if you like. I am an inherent people pleaser. But what I have learned is that it's okay to please myself first, because actually that gives me more strength, more capacity to be able to help people. And I can cherry pick people who I help, who I'm generous with my time with and my energy with. And if they're not willing to help themselves, then it's not that I'm not going to help you, but I'm going to say to you, do your work first, and then I'll be there to help you. It's okay to do that. It's okay to put boundaries in. And it was the tools of boundaries. And then everyday habits that I'd got into thinking there were things that we did together, but actually they weren't. And they were basics of gratitude, kindness, all those things that I thought that we were doing because we loved each other. And it's like, hang on a minute. No, we're doing these for ourselves. So being grateful for things for every day, even in those hardest days after he died, where, it felt like a lot of gray time. And this is the difference between when I live with depression, anxiety, and when I was living with grief, or, I still am living with grief, but in those early days of grief, was when I lived with depression, anxiety, the world just looked gray to me. There was no joy. Literally, I could look at things and I wouldn't see the colors until that one day. I remember I was stood on a hill, I was out for a walk, and it was the first day I actually looked out at this view I looked at every day, and I went, I can see the green in those fields. It was literally that. It was like a color blindness was just lifted. But there was always color in those days after he died. And that was because I allowed myself to smile at the experiences we'd had, the love we had. There was always that. And I really leaned in to those things in order to get me through the hard bits. And I still do. It always comes back to basic habits of, okay, sit down and just take a breath, take a moment. Put the boundaries in place. You don't have to call so-and-so today. And for me, I had to do that with the business as well, because our business was so many different things. It's what I've always described as a portfolio business. So there was at the time an events company, there was a catering element, there was a publishing company, there was the work that we were doing in performance and mindset coaching, there was the music we were doing, there was all these different bits. And I just had to go, hang on a minute, what do I want to do? Because I can't do it all. I don't have to do it all. It's okay that some chapters close here.
Yes.
That's fine.
That's exactly right. And what's interesting about the way you framed that, I was just thinking while you were talking about the catering and the events and the coaching and all of his businesses. Well, it became popular, and then to a certain extent it still is, to multitask, right? And what that does to your brain when you're thinking about, a catering job, and then you need to talk about a coaching job, your brain has to also go with you on both of those journeys, or you're not going to put out the best work you can do. But that's also true in life. And that's where, that I fell in love with the Eisenhower matrix, because you can start saying, okay, what's important and what's urgent, and those things that you see, you just have to put the door on, right? That's
you have to do that. There's almost like you get a Medal of Honor if you can multitask. And it's like, multitask it's not a good thing. Just do
Right.
one thing really well, efficiently and productively, and then the next one. Our brains cannot layer tasks. They can't do
Yes.
it because actually you're not really focusing on anything.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you can tell, and people can tell. I mean, even in a retail shop, you can tell if the cashier is not really paying attention to what you're doing. They've got something else going on. You can tell. It just happens in all that life. So what about that with your personal life? Because you had to go through grief. You had to help your son go through grief. You had these other things. You still had a business to keep up and running and going, but you also had this personal side, and then you had musicians, you had other things that you kept your kind of your heart happy. So how do you balance that?
So that's the key. And I think you've just said it there. Everyone expects you to balance it. And people
Mhm.
like, and I would get asked that question at the time. I still do. How do you balance it all? And for me, the answer to that is I don't try and balance it. You
Right.
can't balance it. What I do is I blend it. So my work life and my personal life are all the same thing. They're just blended. It just is my life. It's what it is.
Yeah.
And when we set up the business and all my working career, we've had this ethos of love what you do and do what you love. And so for me, it was very much, and that's how after in those days after Simon decided, and I took almost a year to really come around to think, how's the business going to look that's right for me? And ironically, just as I'd come to that point of, yeah, this is what we're going to do, then COVID happened and really threw a spanner in the works, and it was like,
Yeah.
well, that feels like it's almost decided for me. We're not doing events anymore because, they've just all cancelled, but yeah, it's about blend. For me, work and life blend together to create your life, because there is no you, making the scales balance between work
Right.
and life, because we say, oh, you want to live to work, not work to live rather than live to work, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, but it is. So why
Yeah.
don't you just pick something that you really love,
Yep.
enjoy it, and then you can blend it better? But I think that a huge problem a lot of people have is they're working so hard to try and balance
Yep.
work and play. You
Yes.
can't. If
Yes.
you start to try and blend it, then actually you get a different result, and a much healthier result that really starts to protect your mental health.
Absolutely. I think I really love that blend. I was asked recently to write an article. I don't know when it'll be out and all that stuff, but and they chose to use the word work life integration instead of work life balance, and that's a
Yeah,
good word too. But I like work life blend much better.
it's easier to
Because
spell.
it's easier to spell. But one area that I think, and I don't know why this popped into my head when you were talking about that, but one area that I think you're right. People are taught now to follow their passion, and all that's great. But let's think about somebody that wants to go through college, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the US it's quite expensive,
Yeah,
and their
yeah,
parents may or may not have that money to do
yeah,
that. And then there's choices: college loans, work,
yeah,
all these things, and the interesting thing about what you said to me is that is kind of the ultimate blend, right? Because you have a necessity to pay for tuition and books and things like that while you're getting an education, which is going to take you to a different level. And there's
yeah,
this, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm not bragging. I did, at one point in my college career, I had 3 jobs just to
yeah,
get through it. But you know what? I think if you're not worried about separating the two or balancing the two, then you can make them all work. And even
yeah,
a young person that's putting themselves through college could have a job that helps them learn
yeah.
about the business world or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. So that blend, I think, it's a big concept that not enough people talk about.
Yeah, and it's something I do try and live by, and it's something I've tried to pass on to my son as well to help him. He's just finishing off his university degree, and he's really done that. He's taken it, that concept and made it his own. So consequently, he has managed to pay his way through university to live doing something he absolutely loves, rather than just getting whatever job to service
Yes.
the means to survive. But actually he gets to do something he loves.
Yeah.
And I think that has a huge impact on how mentally and physically healthy they are as well.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to that one key element you said earlier, and I don't know how you phrased it, but I heard it as confidence, right?
Yeah.
Having the confidence to take that step to do that, right? Your
Yeah.
son could have said, "Oh, sorry for me. I'm just going to, sit around and whine about it, or
Yeah.
he could take that step, right?
Yeah.
So what is that you coach that helps people when they're experiencing mental health issues that kind of gets them into that green field that you described?
Yeah, so the confidence thing, it really comes back to the starting point of that is boundaries. Okay, two things, boundaries and permission. That's what I'm going to say, boundaries and permission. And it's putting boundaries in place as saying, this is right for me and I'm going to stick with it. And if that's not right for you, I respect that, but this is about me. Okay, and that's okay. Now, other people might not like it. If they don't like it, that's a reflection on them, not on you. Okay,
Yeah.
so boundaries are really, really important. You also have to put those boundaries in place with yourself and give yourself a little bit of a kick sometimes and say, hang on a minute, I'm actually self-sabotaging myself because I'm saying, oh no, it's okay to rest. But then 3 days later, when you're still sat on the sofa, binge watching something on Netflix, you have to go, hang on a minute. The best rest I can do is active rest. I need to get up and move. Okay. So you have to put those boundaries in place with yourself as well. The other thing is very much permission. Okay. We have been brought up to await permission from other people. When we were kids, we would wait permission from adults to do something, to start eating after, at dinner time, to go out, what time we had to be back. We were always waiting for permission from other people. And consequently, as we move into our adult life, we're still waiting for that permission. We're waiting for permission from a manager to do a task rather than going about it on our own. And what we have to do is we have to have the confidence to give ourselves permission to do something. If I want to do this, then if I want to get healthier, fitter, do better, escalate in my profession, my career, I can give myself permission to do that. I don't have to wait for someone else to do that. I can go out and learn or create my own business or my own income, or I can give myself permission to smile at the same time I'm crying because I'm mourning the death of somebody. I can do that. Somebody doesn't get to tell me, oh, you should be sad, or, oh, don't you think you should start dating now? No, I give myself permission to do that. And that's one thing I get all the time after my husband died. And I still do, I'm very happily single. And I get this all the time. Don't you think you should move on? Or do you think it's time now that you started saying? It's like, no, because I have given myself permission to be happy, just me living my life. And if you're not okay with that, well, that's your issue. But I'm really good with it, thanks. And that's not saying I'm not open to the right person, but now I've set certain boundaries, I've set certain standards for myself that I won't accept anything less. So there's only space for the right person, boundaries and permission are your two gateways.
I think that's a great analogy, and I have a good friend we participate in a recovery group, and she calls it her hula hoop or their hula hoop, and so she basically says that if they're coming at you with their expectations, that's not inside your hula hoop, so don't worry about it. It's on them to kind of figure that out. And you said that you didn't say hula hoop, but you said the same thing earlier. It's on them, not you. And then boundaries are hard though for people to set sometimes. And do you think that's just because we learn to be givers? Is that how it is?
We've been conditioned that way, as such, through education, just through growing up, and especially for every strength that we have, if you take a strength too far, it becomes your saboteur. So for me, one of my key strengths is kindness. But if I take that too far, I move into that sabotaging area, which is people pleasing. And that might make them happy, but it has a negative impact on me. So it's being really aware of utilizing your strengths, but not taking them too far. Because if you do take them too far, then ultimately you're going to self-sabotage, and that can be really dangerous. And we can almost become addicted to, people pleasing is a really good example, because so many people are, they think it's, well, I'm being kind, I'm giving them my time. But if you're giving them too much of your capacity, or you don't have the capacity to give, but yet you're still giving it, you are ultimately going to make yourself ill.
Yeah. And so if maybe we start with you, if you don't mind me asking. So how do you, when you think about your mental health and you start your day or start a week or you're overwhelmed, I mean, how do you reset your mindset? Maybe is that a good word for it? I'm not sure, but
reframing is what I say. So I have to reframe things a lot, and sometimes just ask myself the question, is this right for me? Okay, that's, if I do this, will it harm anybody else? No. Will it make me feel better? Yes. Do it. It's almost like applying, you mentioned the Eisenhower matrix. It's almost like applying that to yourself. Okay.
Yes.
So urgent, important, that's the Eisenhower matrix, but it's the same kind of thing. So there are filters. I have like questions that I ask myself, filters. Is it safe to say no? Is it okay to say no? And no is a really important word that we're not very good at saying.
Yes.
But it is okay to exactly, yeah. It is okay to say no. And that idea that no is a complete sentence. You don't have to follow that with a caveat of I'm saying no because it's because you've put it through a filter and it's what's right for you and what's wrong, but it's not harming anybody else. It's protecting you. And that's what we have to do. We have to shift that mindset to protection, especially when it comes to our mental health, because everything around mental health is so reactive. We're going to signpost you to the help that you need once you are stressed, once you are burned out, and, but then we're going to give you that help. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to put you on a waiting list because the resources that you need are overstretched and underfunded. And that is absolutely the case here in the UK, as it is, I know, in the States. So actually, we're not helping anybody that way. They're not getting the help that they need. So we need to shift this whole narrative around mental health to one of protection. And the same with grief. Grief, it's going to be hard. It's going to be sad. But do you know what? You are going to experience it at some point. You are going to, because the one thing we can all guarantee is that all of us will experience grief in some form at some time in our life. It's the one guarantee. So why are we not preparing ourselves for this? Why are we not learning how to protect ourselves? So when it does happen, because it will, we know what we need to do to navigate it a little bit better. It's still going to be hard. It's still going to suck. It's still going to be sad, but we can navigate it better. So it's about protection. So for me, it's reframing my mindset, putting it through a filter of questions, which I've kind of developed, which are personal to me over a decade now. And I just, do that every day. And then I have other habits that I do every day. So for me, getting the rest I need, the sleep I need is an absolute must. Okay. Because I know I can't function without it. And as I get older and as, I change hormonally and physically and all those things and emotionally, I need a bit more sleep than I used to. And that's okay. Yeah. If I want to go to bed at 9 o'clock, that's not a failure just because someone else is sitting up at midnight. That's my choice. And I get to choose, So it's about making those choices. For me, other things like, breathing exercises, journaling, any of these things, gratitude, 3 simple things that you're grateful for at the end of the day. They boost your emotional fitness. They boost how you feel about things. And that helps you. And you don't have to do all the exercises. Just cherry pick. And I say to people, if you spend 7 minutes every day just doing something that's good for you on that day, that is going to help you protect your mental health.
Yeah. It's funny. I said this somewhere before, and I'll say it again. I kind of chuckle when I see on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever, and it says, here's the 25 productivity hacks for you to do every day. And I'm thinking, just pick one. Just pick one. Don't try to do 25 productivity hacks.
I'm not going to be happy until I do all 25 every single day. And by the time you've tried, within a week, you're burned out. No.
Yeah. So gosh, time is flying. I agree with you, Tabby, on that. So I want to turn a little bit to the way you help businesses or business people in business. So you perform is something you go out and coach, or you have courseware and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And how does that concept that you just mentioned, protection versus reaction, how does that fit into it?
Yeah. Okay. So Perform is a model or a psychological framework, if you like, that I developed when I was doing my research into positive psychology, when I did my master's. And I came up with this framework and I kind of like almost made it official. It's everything that I'd done for years and years before personally, but it was like almost making it into something tangible that I could share more easily. So what Perform actually stands for, the purpose of it is helping people perform at their best by prioritizing well-being and protecting their mental health. What Perform actually stands for is possibility, so everything's possible, enjoyment, we've got to do what we love, resilience, things are going to be hard. So let's make sure that we can, ride that wave. Focus. So picking the thing that we're going to focus on, not trying to multitask everything. Optimism, because, hope is an anchor. We need to buy into that optimism to build our emotional fitness. Relationships, making sure we've got the right people and good people around us, and also making sure we have a good relationship with ourselves, because that's the first relationship we need to look after. And the last one, the M, is mindset, making sure we've got that growth mindset rather than being fixed in our ways. Okay. So those 7 elements are what make up perform. And for me, it is, if I live by those 7 things, as long as I'm ticking those boxes, then actually I'm protecting my mental health, because I'm not waiting to, I'm not just going, I'm going to keep doing this and do this until I'm stressed. It's like I'm actively doing these things, and what they're doing is help me prioritize well-being, be more productive, see the possibility in things, and protect my mental health. So now how I deliver this is I still coach one-to-one, whether that's people developing their businesses or wanting, life coaching, whatever element it is, because you can apply it to anything really, or musicians that I'm working with, confidence, communication on stage, public speaking, whatever it is, it works in so many different ways. So through coaching, through books that I've written that people can read about it. One of the books that I've written is called The Way to Perform, that really deep dives into each area. The 7-minute morning is kind of lots of different short exercises for each category, whether today I want to focus on focus or optimism, whatever it is. And then I also have a learning platform that I've created called the Perform Experience. And that is a digital learning platform where all my courses that are all grounded in this are available. And the Perform course, which is the signature course itself, that is a kind of course of 2 halves, where the first part is around mental health awareness, because people are still unsure what mental health is. When they hear the words mental health, they think mental illness. And they're such different things, so nuanced. So the first half is very much about mental health awareness. And the second part is, okay, and this is how we're going to improve your well-being. And here's all the tools that you can take to put in your well-being toolkit to help you protect your mental health. And that's what's unique about this course, is that it's the only course whereby it tells you, yep, this is depression, this is anxiety, but hey, this is what we're going to do to make sure we don't get to that point. Now, obviously, some people, and I'll put the caveat in place, some people, the reason they experience mental illness is because of chemical issues, brain issues, neurological illnesses, all the rest of it. So we're not talking about that. We are talking about everyday people trying to get through life and stay away from stress and burnout. That's what we're talking about here. So it applies into personal life. So people can do that as a self-led course over on the learning platform, or, we take this into businesses and do that as their training with all their employees. So here, let's train all your employees, or let's train your managers how to navigate this and to make sure they are developing mentally healthy teams. Now, here in the UK, our statistics run at about 20% of sick days are for mental health issues. And I think it's about similar in the US. It's a lot, that's where it sits. And I have a couple of corporate clients, and I actually go in-house, and I'm there. I do drop-ins, I do the training, I implement this Perform through high performance ways. So I get them to, perform at a higher standard whilst implementing this. And sometimes they don't even realize I'm doing it. They think it's like some kind of ninja warrior mind stuff, But what it does, especially one of my clients, I've been working in there about 4 years, but over the last 2.5 years, we've held it at 0% sick days for mental health issues.
Wow.
Because we have shifted the narrative to one of protection rather than reaction. And this is a stressful industry where people were off for stress, and we haven't had that because we spot it, but we equip them and we say, look, this is a high pressurized industry. It's going to be hard. But if you try these little things every day, and it's things, it could be, let's go out, let's do some personal things with breathing. It could be that, or it could be, let's use the Eisenhower matrix to get you more organized. It's implementing those things that actually start to protect, and then they can manage it. And yes, they're stressed because I mean, you know, spoiler alert, stress isn't a bad thing. It's good for us, you know. But yeah, so that's how we implement it in a business aspect as well. And we literally take businesses with it and reduce their mental health sick days, which means obviously they're bringing in more money, they're more productive, and it's better for the bottom line and growth of the business.
Yeah. And by the way, while you were talking, I got a text. I wish they would have put it in the comments of the live stream, but they texted me. And what we'll do is we'll put links to your books and to your stuff on underneath the video on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and anywhere else you can find this stuff. We'll link you. So that was one of the questions that were coming out. That's interesting. And I had this vision that you come in when you said it's kind of stealth and you ninja and you go out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no one's pushed me out the window yet.
I didn't mean push. I meant anyway. That's fantastic. You know, that whole concept is interesting, and I didn't realize that on the number of days of mental health. And then for you to actually be able to measure the impact is fantastic, because there's so many things out there that you can do, and there's good and there's great and there's maybe not so great things. But if you can measure it, then, and you know you're helping somebody, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And you know, everything I do, Michael, and I've always said this from day one, everything that I do, everything I talk about, because the things I talk about do come with a lot of resistance, especially grief, mental health. People will say, well, why are you talking about that? We shouldn't be talking about it. And it was no surprise really that one of my books I actually called The Three Taboos: Cancer, Grief, and Mental Health, because they were the three subjects that people like, oh, you shouldn't talk about that. But we absolutely should. So I'm fine with resistance, because when people have got something to say about that, it means that they need a conversation about it. They need to learn. So it's opportunity for a conversation. And that is really important. But we do need to talk about these things, and because people still try to hush them up.
Yes, absolutely. We all do it. We're all guilty of that somehow, in some way. We try to think, well, no one needs to know about that problem.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just that does just bottle up in there. So
so
we talked about work.
If I'm talking about it, if it helps just one person, it's worth talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've talked about work-life blend. We've talked about habits, pausing. We've talked about a lot of stuff, which is great. And we're almost out of time. So I wanted to talk a little bit and put something in there for Hatham, who's the producer of the show. I'll use his words, the final crescendo. So that's about as musical as I could get. And I'm not even sure what that means, other than I think it's the big finale.
We're getting the big finale,
yeah. So as far as like, tell us something about you, a daily habit, a routine, or something that just kind of changed the way that you operate. Anything fun? It could be on the music side even.
The music side, you know what? I'm going to confession here to anyone that's watching. I probably don't do as much on a daily basis as I should. For me, every day, there's no set one thing that I do every day. For me, it's about what do I feel like doing today. So some days it might be, do you know, I need to have that intentional pause. I need to sit. I need to do nothing. Another day it might be, I need to go out for a walk. I need to connect with the right people. And I think that's, for me, the one thing that I do is give myself permission to do anything that I want, but know that I don't have to do everything.
That's great. Yeah. Well, that reminder every day anyway will free so much stress off of you. If you go into the day thinking you have to do everything, you're going to fail. There's no way to achieve that. Right. So
exactly.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's very good. All right. So tell everybody where they can find you. We'll put the links in the thing, but where can people find you?
Yep. So you can find me here on LinkedIn. Just look up my name, Tabby Kerwin. Same on Instagram. You can find me at Tabby Kerwin. You can find any of my business details over on the website, which is mode4.co.uk, which is modefor.co.uk. And you can find my learning platform at theperformexperience.com, where we've got lots of digital self-led courses, and also courses in how to become a coach, as well as the Perform course, mental health courses, and some CPD accredited and holistic courses over there. There's even a brand new course we've launched today, actually, which is how to become a wedding planner. So putting those things that I used to do all to good use. So that's on there. And I have to say that because otherwise my assistant Kerry would have absolutely killed me if I hadn't have mentioned that then, because I co-wrote it with Kerry, and it's great. It's everything we wished we'd learned or knew when we started. So yeah, you can find me in all those places, and my books, literally just go on Amazon and you will put my name in and you will find me. That's fantastic. And so somebody can learn today that they can take care of their mental health. Yep.
as well as learn a new trade and being wedding
Absolutely,
planners.
yeah.
They're looking for a new opportunity. There you go.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Tabby, so great to see you again. Thank you so much for spending some time with us your evening, our morning. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, everybody. You can find next week, we're going to be talking with Emily Ackerman, who is a new parent. She's dealing with her own kind of stress. She's 100% business. You can find her on LinkedIn. She's got great content. And then she became a parent, and she's still in her maternity leave. We're going to catch her right before she goes back to work and get her insights on all of that. And
That's my assistant. Yes, okay. She would have killed me.
There you go. Excellent. All right, Tabby, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week and weekend. And thanks everybody for joining. And be sure to check out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast, and share it with a friend and subscribe. Thank you.